didn't know why I agreed to go into the old building. Maybe it was the thrill of doing something forbidden, or maybe it was just to prove to myself that I wasn't afraid. The place had been abandoned for as long as I could remember, standing tall and dark at the edge of town like a decaying giant. People said it was haunted, but I didn't believe in ghosts. At least not then. It was a cloudy night when I decided to go. The moon was hidden behind thick layers of clouds, casting a dim, eerie light on everything. I could hear the wind whistling through the trees as I walked down the dirt path that led to the building. The closer I got, the more my heart pounded, but I told myself it was just nerves. I wasn't scared, I couldn't be. The entrance was a gaping hole where the front door used to be. The wood had rotted away, leaving splinters and jagged edges. I took a deep breath, stepped inside, and immediately felt the temperature drop. The air inside was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the building itself was holding its breath. My footsteps echoed as I moved through the first room. Dust covered everything, a thick, choking layer that made it hard to see what was beneath. Old furniture, broken and forgotten, was scattered around like the remains of a once lively place. The walls were peeling, revealing the bones of the building beneath. A faint smell of mildew and rot hung in the air. I moved slowly, trying to take in every detail. Something was unsettling about the silence, as if the building was waiting for something. Every creak of the floorboards under my weight made me flinch. I kept telling myself it was just an old building, nothing more. But deep down, something didn't feel right. I walked through a narrow hallway, the walls closing in on me. My flashlight flickered and I cursed under my breath. I tapped it a few times and the light steadied. I could see the end of the hallway now, a door slightly ajar. I don't know what made me push it open, but I did. The room beyond was larger, emptier. The windows were broken and the wind howled through them, making the curtains dance like they were alive. I shined my light around the room and that's when I saw it. In the far corner, a shadow moved, slowly, deliberately. At first I thought it was just the wind playing tricks on me, but then it moved again, and I realized it wasn't the wind. The shadow had a shape, a form that was almost human, but not quite. It was darker than the night, like a piece of the building had broken off and come to life. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The shadowy figure stood still, watching me. It had no eyes, but I could feel its gaze, cold and piercing. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Then without warning, the figure moved. It slid across the floor without a sound, coming closer, and I finally found the strength to turn and run. I dashed down the hallway, my flashlight bouncing in my hand. The shadows seemed to stretch, reaching for me as I fled. I could hear something behind me, a soft rustling that grew louder and closer with every step. I stumbled through the rooms, tripping over debris and broken furniture. My breath came in ragged gasps, but I didn't dare stop. The building felt like a maze, twisting and turning, leading me in circles. I could feel the walls closing in, the darkness pressing down on me. Finally, I saw the exit, the hole where the front door used to be. I threw myself through it, falling onto the dirt outside. The cold night air hit me like a wave, and I scrambled to my feet, looking back at the building. The shadowy figure was standing just inside, watching me. It didn't follow, but I could feel its presence, like a weight on my chest. I didn't stop running until I was back on the main road, my legs burning and my lungs screaming for air. Only then did I slow down, looking back at the building one last time. It was just a dark shape against the night sky, silent and still, but I knew what I had seen. I never went back to that place, and I never told anyone what happened, but sometimes, when the night is quiet and the wind is still, I can feel that cold gaze on me again, as if the shadow never really let me go. It's a feeling that sends a chill down my spine, reminding me of that night and the darkness that lives just on the edge of the light. Before we get into the next story, if you're new here, please subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks. I'm a fan of isolation, but Living alone at the edge of the Alaskan forest brought a new level of loneliness. My nearest neighbor, Thomas, lived a 5-minute walk down the road. His was the only other house for miles. I had moved here for peace, and it was perfect. The thick forests enveloped the area, and at night the silence was almost deafening, the kind that makes you feel like you're the last person on earth. From the start, Thomas was friendly, a bit older than me, maybe in his late 50s. He helped me move in, shared tips about wilderness living, and even brought homemade bread. I thought I couldn't have asked for a better neighbor. One night, settled on the couch with a movie, the wind howled outside, making the trees sway. I had a fire going to fend off the chill of the Alaskan winter. Just as I was getting lost in the plot, a knock startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. Peeking through the peephole, I saw it was Thomas. I opened the door and he offered a strained smile. "Hey, Thomas, what's going on?" I asked, stepping aside. The wind was biting, and I didn't want to keep the door open too long. He hesitated before stepping inside. "I saw someone near your house," he said, his voice low. "They were circling around, just wandering." A cold knot settled in my stomach. The thought of a stranger lurking outside was unsettling. "Thanks for the heads up," I said, locking the door behind him. "Did you see who it was?" He shook his head. "No, it was too dark, but they didn't belong here." After a few minutes of small talk, he left. I locked the door, checking the windows to ensure everything was secure, but the thought of someone circling my house gnawed at me. I double-checked the back door before going to bed, trying to shake off my unease, but the wind didn't let up, and every creak of the house seemed amplified. I must have dozed off because I suddenly woke to someone talking outside. At first I thought I was dreaming, but the voices were real. Groggy, I walked to the window, which was cracked open, letting in a chilling breeze. My heart skipped a beat when I saw Thomas standing next to the house, not alone. A man I didn't recognize stood with him, his back to me. They were talking, but I couldn't make out the words. Maybe Thomas had gone out looking for the guy he'd seen earlier. I shook my head, telling myself I was overthinking it. Perhaps they caught the stranger and everything was fine now. Still, it felt off. I closed the window and crawled back into bed, pulling the covers tight. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but then I heard it. A loud crash from downstairs. My blood ran cold. I sat up, heart racing, straining to listen for more sounds. It was unmistakably glass breaking. My living room window. Panic set in. Was someone breaking in? I rushed to my bedroom window, peering outside. Thomas still stood there, but the man was gone. He didn't move, just stared at my house. Something was seriously wrong. Grabbing my phone, I locked my bedroom door, hands shaking as I dialed 911. Keeping my voice steady, I reported what had happened. The operator assured me help was on the way. I stayed in my room, heart pounding, listening intently for any more sounds. After what felt like hours, I heard the distant wail of sirens. Relief washed over me as the police arrived quickly. After a tense wait, they found the intruder. He'd broken in through the living room window but hadn't made it upstairs yet. But that wasn't the end. After questioning me and searching the area, the police discovered something disturbing. The man who had broken in wasn't a random stranger. He was someone Thomas had been in contact with for months. They found messages between them planning something terrible. I didn't catch all the details, but it was clear Thomas wasn't the kind neighbor I thought he was. He'd been watching me, scheming, and that night was supposed to be the culmination. The police arrested Thomas, and I never saw him again. I sold the house soon after. There was no way I could stay. Not after everything that had happened. I moved to New York City, far away from the isolation of the Alaskan wilderness. Yet I still remember that night, every detail etched in my mind. I'm no stranger to awkward moments, but getting locked in a locker takes the cake. Back in middle school, I joined the basketball team, not because I was good, trust me, I wasn't, but to fill my afternoons with something, anything. I thought maybe things would improve, but the other kids only ramped up the teasing. One day after practice, as we headed to the locker room, I felt that familiar mix of nerves and dread. I hadn't brought my phone, which felt like stepping into the dark ages. My mom was picking me up later, but without my phone, I felt completely cut off. As I changed out of my sweaty clothes, I noticed 3 teammates approaching. They were the ones who loved to mock my shooting skills, and today it was no different. Look, it's the worst player on the team," one of them shouted, and laughter erupted from the others. I tried to brush it off with a weak laugh, but they weren't finished. Before I knew it, they grabbed me and began dragging me toward the lockers. I thought they were just joking around, but then it hit me. They were serious. "Hey, stop it," I yelled, trying to pull away, but they were too strong. They shoved me into a locker, and before I could comprehend what was happening, I heard the distinct sound of the lock clicking shut. Panic surged through me. I pounded on the door and shouted, but all I got in response were fading footsteps and cruel laughter. Time crawled by. I was trapped in this dark, cramped space, my heart racing with each passing minute. I kept hoping someone would come looking for me. Just as despair started to settle in, I heard a door creak open. My heart jumped. "Is someone in there?" a voice called out. I banged on the door again, desperation creeping into my voice. A janitor appeared, looking annoyed but concerned. I explained the situation, and while he seemed exasperated, he didn't hesitate to help. "I'll get something to cut it open," he said, leaving me alone once more. I felt the chill of isolation settle in again, but he returned with an angle grinder. The noise was deafening, and finally the door swung open. I stumbled out, legs stiff and mind racing. "Thanks," I managed to say, my voice trembling. He nodded and walked away, clearly uninterested in my drama. I dashed to the lobby where my mom was pacing, worry etched on her face. When she saw me, relief flooded her features. I poured out the whole story, and her anger mixed with concern was palpable as she hugged me tightly. So that night, we talked long into the evening, and I made the decision. I was quitting the basketball team. I didn't want to be around those bullies any longer. The next day, news broke that the boys who had locked me in were suspended for 2 weeks. It was a strange mix of vindication and disbelief. I didn't expect much, but at least I wouldn't have to see their faces again. In the following weeks, I found new clubs to join, made real friends who lifted me up instead of tearing me down. I never touched a basketball again. Now, whenever I see a game on TV, I'm reminded of that dark locker, of how sometimes the best choice is to walk away and find a place where you truly belong. I'm here to share a haunting story from almost a year ago, one that still lingers in my mind. My girlfriend Katie and I thought we'd found the perfect escape by renting a cozy cabin through the Airbnb last October. We imagined a peaceful weekend surrounded by the vibrant autumn colors, far away from the hustle of everyday life. When we arrived, the drive had been long but beautiful, winding through forests painted in reds, oranges, and yellows. The cabin stood isolated, just off a gravel road, smelling of pine and damp leaves. It was everything we hoped for, small, inviting, and remote. After unloading our bags, we settled into the rustic interior, complete with a wood-burning stove and a shelf of old books left by previous guests. Eager to explore, Katie wanted to light a fire, so I began searching for matches and a hatchet for kindling. That's when I spotted a small, hidden door behind the kitchen, low and almost camouflaged. "What do you think's down there?" I called to Katie, who approached with a curious look. "Maybe storage," she suggested, though the locked door felt odd. Not wanting to dwell on it, we spent the evening cooking dinner, playing cards, and enjoying the crackling fire. As night fell, we both felt content in our little slice of tranquility. But around midnight, everything changed. I woke to a faint, unsettling sound, knocking. Initially, I thought it was outside, perhaps a branch against the window. But as I listened more closely, I realized it was coming from beneath us. My heart raced as I shook Katie awake. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. Her eyes widened with fear as she nodded. The knocking was slow and rhythmic, as if someone trapped below was desperately trying to escape. We were both terrified, but instead of leaving, a strange curiosity compelled me to investigate. I grabbed the flashlight, and Katie followed, her apprehension palpable. As I reached the small door, the knocking ceased, replaced by a chilling silence. I hesitated, but ultimately pulled out my multi-tool, working on the lock until I heard it click open. Slowly, I pushed the door ajar, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. A musty smell hit me as I shone the flashlight down. At the bottom, a man sat against the wall, gaunt, dirty, with wild eyes that locked onto mine. "Please, help me," he rasped, his voice barely audible, filled with desperation. I was frozen, shocked. Katie gasped, gripping my arm tightly. "What happened?" I finally managed to ask. He spoke in broken phrases about a month spent locked away. He'd rented the cabin, but fallen into a dispute with the owner, who had chosen to imprison him instead of resolving the issue. I struggled to comprehend the horror of his situation. Looking into his eyes, I sensed the truth. This was no prank or delusion. We called the police, and when they arrived, they took the man to safety and arrested the cabin owner. Later, we learned the owner was seemingly ordinary, a man who didn't fit the mold of a monster. Yet his actions were grotesque, hiding another human away in his basement for weeks. That morning, Katie and I hurriedly left the cabin, eager to distance ourselves from the nightmare. The entire experience haunted me. What if we had chosen to ignore that knocking? What if we had left without investigating? That man might still be down there, his plight forever unknown. As I reflect on that weekend, I realize how fragile our reality can be, and how easily darkness can hide behind a facade of normalcy. Please make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks.